more things change, the more they stay the same. This is one of those rare maxims that turns out to be true. And I want to talk about this maxim in the context of human nature, the human condition, whatever you want to call it. Now, before I go into the actual human condition, I want to talk about, and this is related to this, the kinds of repetition that human beings like. And what do I mean by repetition? Way back, I made the video Autopilot. I talked about different variables, a limited number of variables, although there might be many, still limited, not infinite. Variables representing, if you will, behavioral directions that human beings can venture into. And this is also true in terms of human interests, generally speaking. For the most part, there are probably, many different paths or areas of interest, but they're still not infinite. They're limited. And the primary hindrance here, or obstacle, if you want to call it that, to diversifying human interest is a somewhat fixed human nature. Now, I say somewhat because human nature can change. It just takes such a long time that talking about millions of years, and I mean real change. I'm not talking about changes in, glucose metabolism or fat distribution on the body, things like that. Those happen relatively quickly. But large-scale changes that can take millions of years, or at very least hundreds of thousands, we have a fairly fixed nature. Now, if you talking about the cinema now, look at the kinds of films that are produced, and you'll see the same memes and themes repeated over and over and over again. It's one of the reasons why I don't go to the cinema anymore. It's just endless repetition of the same junk, over and over and over again. And if you want to look at cinema as a kind of modern version of, what might have been in the past, a piece of theater, a theater piece, a novel, that kind of entertainment, they're much the same in terms of the themes that they cover and handle. This should not be surprising. What interests human beings tends to be the same thing that has always interested human beings. In the case of, say, cinema, you have various tropes. You have everyone, I'm using air quotes, everyone's interested in a love story. Woman meets romantic hero who sacrifices all for her, blah, 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 that appeals to the female, happily ever after. Even in films such as Superman or Batman, they actually seem quite different from each other. Not. They're sort of two sides of the same coin. They're both part of the hero myth, right? I mean, Superman is the god, effectively, and Batman is the man who defies his mortality by venturing into the darkness and danger and proving his heroism thereby. And across the spectrum, you'll just see fluctuations and minor deviations of this, all of the same themes that interest human beings, repeated ad nauseum. And if you doubt this, you need only look at the rate of film production, or for that matter, television production, and the things that are produced. Similar things are produced constantly, over and over and over again. And this is, I think, a clear-cut sign that human beings don't really want change. They want the same thing that they've always wanted. And there's an interesting video, fairly interesting, it's not, but fairly interesting video by a guy named Game Theorist. He has over 3 million views, one of the big channels. He talks about what gamers want, specifically in the video game context. Talks about Call of Duty, Battlefield, and how the theme is just repetitive and goes on, and yet the sales keep on increasing. So people basically across the spectrum want the same thing, human beings. Men are stimulated by a certain set of, we'll say, motivational variables, and women are put to action by a certain set of motivational variables. And these will not really be very differentiated across the board. There will be some individual fluctuation and difference, but for the most part, human beings are the same as they were 100,000 years ago, and their interests haven't changed. The environment, the landscape, changes. So what I mean to say is that, by and large, human nature, the human condition, is reactive. It's not changeable, it's reactive. And what do I mean by reactive? It reacts to different changes in the environment, be they technological, social, etc., and it adapts within the limited context of human behavior and the limited context of what human beings are capable within that behavioral paradigm. It's very rare to see deviations from that, and to the extent that you do, it's usually due to some neurological condition, and even that can be somehow fitted into the greater pattern of human behavior. So why am I talking about why human beings like repetition and why they like the same thing over and over again? And human beings don't really like innovation for the most part. The same themes interest them. The love trope, the heroic guy risking it all trope, and so on and so forth. Well, I mean, there's for some time been some discussion about, I guess you want to call it the alterability of the human condition. And a lot of people have taken some umbrage with what Karen Straughan, aka Girl Rights What, has said. And yeah, I'm on pretty good terms with Karen Straughan, even though I never talk to her these days. But that's not a jab at her. I'm just saying she's busy. But still, my most recent talk with her a couple of months back, sort of interview style, back and forth, there was some disagreement, some in the comment section. Karen has gone on record as saying something to the effect, and I'm paraphrasing here, if you had to choose between the two, working your ass off and getting shit for it, or working your ass off and getting, the draft horse carrot accolades, you'd choose the latter. That's not an irrational, illogical argument. It makes sense. Some people have interpreted this as saying she supports traditionalism, and she does definitely have some traditionalist tendencies. I know in private conversation she has nothing against it, and she doesn't see anything wrong with hypergamy. Well, guess what? I don't see anything wrong, air quotes, with hypergamy either, nor do I see anything, air quotes, wrong with male polygamous lustfulness. Using terminology such as wrong, applying some sort of moral quality to innate human behavior, female or male, is somewhat a miss, I think. I don't think it really hits the spot. What we can say is that male and female behavior can have destructive outcomes, depending on the context, depending on where it is voiced, where it is expressed. Hypergamy can be extremely destructive in, say, the current setup we have of large-scale government support for women, a limited pool of men, and probably, this is anecdotal, but it seems more and more men sinking at the bottom of the dominance hierarchy and very few on top, with the women, dragging and screaming and kicking for just a few. We all know how female hypergamy works. That can be destructive. It can be destructive in terms of divorce, damage to family units, and so on and so forth. But so can male lustfulness in some cases, and I don't use this term bad or wrong or good or whatever. Needless to say, both male instinct and female instinct are there because in the past they provided evolutionary advantages, and evolutionary advantage always just means an advantage to replicate your genes. That's all it is, making copies of genes. That's all evolution is about, for the most part. There are some spandrels and stuff, but that's a separate topic. But the main point is copies of genes. Okay, and this helped in the past. And I've talked about this in the past as well. I've talked about in all kinds of different videos how sometimes you can get Fisherian runaway effects, possibly in humans and on a social level, and so on and so forth. But wrong. So some people have taken umbrage with Karen Straughan saying, hypergamy. I have no problem with hypergamy, but da da da. My issue with hypergamy, if you want to call it an issue, is just the profound level of ignorance and unawareness that most human beings, especially women towards their own behavior, but also men, have towards female behavior. The ill that men sometimes do because of their guttural instincts is well highlighted in society. We know all about it. The good they do far less frequently. Women, no matter what they do, they're always doing some kind of good. But hypergamy per se, I don't really have an issue with it because it is what it is. On this journey of knowledge I've taken and been on for quite some time, I've learned to remove certain appellations from certain forms of behavior, whilst acknowledging that it can have a destructive outcome. All kinds of human behavior can have a destructive outcome. But it is what it is. It's there to replicate genes. It's nothing more, nothing less. Now, one area where I'm on the same page on as Karen Straw and Girl Writes What is if you want to call it this, we'll call it this, a kind of pessimism towards human nature, a kind of pessimism towards the alterability of human nature. I mean, I do believe for the most part that human beings have a fairly fixed nature. As I said, the time intervals allotted to us are not great enough, such that we could say it's so flexible that within a couple of decades and so on, there can be great changes. So we're reactive. We're not alterable or changeable. We're reactive as creatures, as animals. And a lot of people take umbrage with this too, but if you look at the largest subset of human beings, the ones that fall into the mainstream, they're pretty predictable. They like their love stories, their hero stuff, their Call of Duty, and so on and so forth. There's a reason why they're that way. And I mean, I have some theoretical ideas of what the best model for society would be, but for the most part, I'm much like Karen in this regard. I don't know what would be best for society at large. And I'm not going to make a suggestion in that regard. I'm really primarily concerned with just understanding the fundamentals of human nature and just my own individual path, and to the extent that other people tell me about theirs, particularly men's individual path. Now, in addition to this, ever since the John the Other ruckus has been going on, people have been coming out on, family, the same stuff as always. MGTOW's anti-family. I don't know. I can't talk about others. I'm not anti-family. I'm indifferent to family. I don't see it as some sort of task or obligation for me to figure out what's to be done with the family. That's for you guys to figure out. You guys who are so obsessed with biological legacy. This is a short, brief existence we have. I want to just enjoy my life. I don't want to slave away for someone for the sake of replicating my genes. Have fun with that. So that's my answer to that. Do whatever you want. Don't fucking try to force me to do anything, or we're going to have a problem. That's my issue, and the issue I talked about in the previous video. You want to be a tradcon. You want to be a workhorse for some woman while she sucks your dick and pops out babies for you. That's totally cool. But the minute you try and say, oh, you're not doing that too, you should be some sort of pariah, or you should suffer a penalty in some sort of, in terms of taxes or whatever, then we have an issue. And yeah, if that's the context of traditional conservatism, then I have an issue with it. Yeah, then I am quote unquote anti-family. As long as you leave me the fuck alone, yeah, and let me speak my mind without impinging on that, you do whatever the fuck you want. Replicate your genes, pop out babies, whatever. And if you think I'm talking disparagingly about it, I'm not. I'm just talking about what it is. You think it's some mystical process, having a family, inseminating a woman. I inseminated a woman unintentionally years ago. Believe me, it's nothing special. She had an abortion. That's neither here nor there. So I can understand where Karen's coming from. For one thing, she's a woman. And I'm sure if Karen ever watches this, she knows what I mean. She's a woman. And no matter how male-ish she might seem or masculine she might seem in some regards, she is a woman. She has the same instincts. And even though she's treated her ex-husband, I think, quite fairly based on the evidence I've seen, there was a reason why she divorced him. I mean, she wanted a bigger, better deal. And I think for the most part, she's found that in her current husband. Stardust terminology, husband. But so I understand her perspective. The one thing, but the one thing about Karen that I'm pretty sure about, say 99% sure, is that she is 100% behind MGTOW. She's not for telling men what to do. If men want to just play video games all day, or play football all day, or study aquaponics all day, I mean, she's not against it. As long as you're doing your own thing and not hurting anyone, I know she's 100% behind that, and that's why she's got my support. I mean, I myself can't say hypergamy is evil. What does that mean in this context? It's just, it is what it is. It can have damaging outcomes, just like any form of human behavior can. And on a final note, this is not me excusing it. Where there is a damaging outcome, for the sake of, well, a coherent society, yeah, you need to draw attention to that damaging outcome. You need to point it out, and that's why where I do take umbrage, where I think it's a serious issue, the profound ignorance we have towards female behavior, specifically hypergamy, and their general tendencies when it comes to dealing with men. There is a mirage out there. There's obfuscation. There is just a wall of silt and gook covering everything, and we can't see past it. And I'm here to clarify that. That's part of my job here. I see it at least that way. And let's just have all the cards out in the open. Let's just put everything out in the open, full disclosure, and then we can talk about all these things. You see, another issue I have with traditional conservatism is there's some sort of, first off, elevation of just basically economic trade. You suck my dick, I pay your bills kind of thing, is some sort of noble endeavor. It's no more noble than me paying a cashier a couple of euros for a banana and chocolate bar. It's the same thing. And the obfuscation of female natures. As long as females do such and such, they are virtuous, and as long as males do such and such, is virtuous. It's a rigid worldview. This, once again, some of my opposition towards this worldview comes from that. It's too rigid, it's too all-encompassing, and it doesn't allow for individual freedom, be that for men or for women, to the extent that women want to be free. But a lot of people, as I said, think that for this reason, Karen is a kind of a traditionalist. She's not. I mean, she certainly has sympathies for traditionalism, there's no doubt, but she's totally behind MGTOW. I'm pretty convinced of that, because I don't think she'd ever say, hey, you do this because da-da-da. In fact, she's gone on record. Say, if you want to do that, if you want to fucking... if you're a woman, you want to make sandwiches and give blowjobs for salary, then do that. And if you're a man and you want to pay a woman a salary for blowjobs and sandwiches, then do that. But if you don't, then do that too. That's her view, pretty much, I'm pretty sure. And if she comments, she'll either corroborate that or not. But we need to be aware of the destructive outcomes of human behavior without really assigning qualitative labels to them. We can assign qualitative labels to the outcomes, but not the behaviors themselves. I think that's an important distinction to make. And like I said, what the most important thing to do is combat ignorance. I don't know, it certainly wouldn't be ideal society, but a society, a world, a civilization where all this information were just out there and there were no secrets, no nothing, that would be interesting, and at least a first step towards seeing what it is we actually have as a human male or a human female before our eyes. And we don't need to excuse bad behavior on the part of any human being. As long as our system runs on in my opinion, lopsided concept of free will and what have you, then yeah, we need to hold people accountable. If only to scare other people from doing the same kind, engaging in same kinds of behaviors. So that's a reason to do it as well. But anyway, I just wanted to offer some clarification what I mean, the alterability of the human condition. The more things change, the more they stay the same. What does that mean at the end of the day? The more things change, the more environment changes, the more human beings react to it within the same manner, using the same methods and means that human beings have always reacted to it. It's just an endless repetition. It's why the cinema is that way. Hollywood. It's why games are that way. People like the same shit. Notice when people try to do something that's not within the sphere of human interest, it tends to fail rather miserably. And this is true of every genre, and I'm no exception. I mean, if the RPGs, for example, I love my RPGs, and what you see in a good RPG is just kind of building upon classic elements rather than completely adding new things that have nothing to do with what has been in the past. Anyway, that's all I got to say about this for now. There should be more to come in the coming month. Everyone, thanks for watching, and you take care. Bye-bye.